Welcome, 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 welcome everyone. Wonderful to see you all. Hi friends online. Welcome. Welcome, dear Ale. So wonderful to have you here. Yeah. So many familiar faces and some folks who are maybe drawn by the beautiful, bright Dharma light of Alejandro Chaoul, who we have here with us. This is the Well of Being Wednesday evening. I'm Eve Ekman, and welcome to this beautiful community. This is a center that is entirely volunteer run. So we exist here floating on the beautiful generosity of many beings in this room. And it is our aspiration on these evenings together to have this beautiful opportunity to not only receive the teachings, but also reflect on the teachings, digest the teachings. And when we get to do that together, the power and the momentum of those insights is so much increased. And part of our aspiration here is to deepen our knowledge around what it takes to have a wide open heart when this world around us is on fire. And that's not a new phrase. So many of you who come every week know this is the Bodhisattva aspiration. This has been since the 8th century text of Shantideva. How do we every single day find the way to kind of forge the inner pathways of compassion and polish the inner lens so that we can really know ourselves well and be able to withstand a lot of the difficulties surrounding us in the world, and also savor and be with the beauty of Dharma, of Sangha, and of these teachings together. So tonight we are so blessed to have Alejandro Chaoul, and I want to mention a couple things about this wonderful being that you might not know. So he's been studying in the last 30 years in this beautiful tradition, the Bon tradition. Some of you came when one of his teachers, Tenzin Mongyal Rinpoche, was with us last year and may know a bit about that tradition and culture, but has a beautiful resonance with bringing in the elements of the natural world, using very specific practices of breath and Tibetan yogas in order to help us manage not just maladies and difficulties that represent where these practices came from thousands of years ago, but practices that help us today with stress and burnout. And Alejandro and I have had this kind of shared double secret agent life. So deep practitioner, so committed to the lineage and the practices, and working in the leading cancer hospital of this country, MD Anderson, doing research on breath practices and meditation for decades. So being able to translate those ancient wisdoms and without scrubbing the sacred, put them under the rigor of randomized controlled trials. And some of you in the room know what that means. It's hard, right? To study the nuance and the subtlety of these practices, and it's essential so they become accessible to more people. And one of the things that Ale has really beautifully woven is that depth and that accessibility. So his doctoral work is in religious studies, but here he is as a teacher and collaborator and researcher on these studies as well. He has a couple interests that you'll see through what he's offered through the world. He has a book on chud. Many of you are familiar with feeding your demons. We've often taught that here. It's an early interest of his and, of course, of this Sangha, which is turning towards what is difficult and kind of finding the richness of that. And not only the richness, but kind of finding the ally or the wisdom of that difficult material. And also had 2 books that he's written on Tibetan yogas and how we can use them in everyday life, which we'll talk about today and also tomorrow. So that's what we will be weaving into. To get us started, we're going to be settling in with a practice. We'll do a series of practices tonight. So this one is really an invitation for us to just connect with where we are here in this moment. We all came from somewhere else. Hopefully no one was running down the street or running to get in front of their computer, but So much momentum and activity of the day. Let's give ourselves a moment to settle in. And for folks here in this room, especially if it's your first time, it could be useful to just look around, take in the space, take in the other folks. We have Mace, fierce protector of the Dharma, compassion warrior at the door, so we are safe in this room together. And it's, can be a bit of invitation for us to allow the body, the mind, the heart to settle. So maybe noticing the room, other beings, noticing even feelings of discomfort or awkwardness, being in a newer space if it's your first time. And as feels natural for you, either allowing the eyes to close or softening them so the gaze is just in front of you. And with our first couple breaths, really allowing our attention and awareness to roam freely, not trying to narrow it or tether it anywhere in particular. The attention might want to be with the sense portal of sound, listening to what's happening around us. Or maybe with sensations in the body. It could be with passing thoughts. So a couple moments just allowing ourselves to settle and naturally explore what is here. And gently bringing our attention and awareness a bit closer and focusing on the sensations in the body. And inviting the body to settle in a natural state of stillness, stability. Nowhere else we're going, nothing else we need to be doing. So inviting that full presence. Soften the eyes. And soften the eyes again. And soften through the jaw. And invite that softening through the chest, shoulders, the belly. A couple more moments here. Returning to this anchor of settling the body into a natural state with the quality of stillness, stability. And of course, there's thoughts, memories, images, wanderings of the mind. So we can invite a little settling of the inner speech by focusing now more on the breath. Breathing in, feel, sense, and notice the breath at the belly. And breathing out, continuing, sustaining that noticing of the breath at the belly. Even if we are close to the breath for just one full cycle, we've really refreshed ourselves, bringing this quality of silence and gentleness. So just a bit longer here, settling the inner speech, inviting these qualities of silence and gentleness, breathing in, noticing the breath at the belly, and breathing in that same noticing, sensing, feeling breath at the belly. And every time we get carried away, we just relax, release, and return, refreshing our interest in the breath. While still feeling this sense of being settled in the body, to that stillness, and connected to the breath, inviting the silence, the inner speech. You can sense or imagine a leaning back in the mind, and settling a mind into its natural state of warmth and openness. And that warmth is the natural radiance of the heart. This intrinsic caring, compassion, and kindness, always already here. And the vastness is the unbounded nature of our awareness, permeated by that warmth. And so gently feeling that sense of warmth and openness within the body and all around the body, above us and below us. side to side. And for a moment together, finding whatever glimmer or whatever space of compassion and kindness feels present. And considering the opportunity of this practice and evening together to help strengthen that inner light. So arousing this quality of bodhicitta, this awakened heart. A heart that so knows its own joy and sorrows that it wants all beings to know their joys and sorrows. And just 3 more breaths here, breathing in, feeling this body, heart, and mind as body, heart, and mind of compassion. And breathing out, feeling this body, heart, and mind as body, heart, and mind of compassion. Thank you for your practice. Welcome again. So I'm going to give a little bit of setup here, and then we're going to go back and forth and share some insights and practices together. One of the things Ale and I feel quite passionate about is supporting folks working in the front lines, care providers, who are dealing with stress and burnout. However, we are all working in the front lines of our lives with the people we care about, with managing our stress, not only at those personal levels with our intimate sphere, but of course on the global stage, all the difficulties. So anybody in this room experiencing a little burnout? I want to disentangle that term to just help us a bit know what it is we need to be working with when we're working with stress and burnout. So burnout includes actually these 3 main phases, or these 3 main domains. And this work that was done to kind of discover this phenomena of burnout, it's really quite simple. So much research is actually talking to people and observing. Of course, we also have very fancy tools. We can observe the brain, physiology, but a lot of it is talking to people. And when Christina Maslach was interested in this phenomena of chronic stress at work or burnout, she interviewed hundreds of people, first police officers, then healthcare professionals. What's your stress like? How does it feel? How does it manifest? What causes it? And she discovered that there kind of really fell into these 3 main domains that were distinct. And one of them is this sense of emotional exhaustion. And actually the majority of research on burnout is looking at that level. And that kind of highlights that aspect when you're at work every day and there's this level of emotion labor. I have to kind of smile sometimes when I don't want to, and I can't frown when I do want to, and I'm engaging with other people. And no matter how kind of removed you are in your job, at some point or another, you have to deal with other people, right? And there can be so much kind of emotional exhaustion from that relational place. So that's that first level of burnout. And then there's a second level of burnout that's more about feeling that your work matters. Like what I do makes a difference. There's some sort of purpose and I have some sort of efficacy in doing it. So when I feel emotionally exhausted, at the end of the day, we come home and it's like that kind of collapse experience. But with that, what I do doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. There's like an agitated quality to it. And then this third level or layer is sometimes called callousness or cynicism or depersonalization. And this isn't an order. And in fact, interestingly, you can be exhausted and experience the callousness, but still feel meaning in your work, which is, I've noticed that among healthcare professionals, but that callousness or that cynicism is I just can't. I'm glad there's a meme that I can now describe. I just can't, right? I'm just done. And I remember we were talking, there's two of us in the room who used to work at SF General, maybe more. We were talking about SF General, and I used to call it the not my job phenomena, right? When you're at your job doing what's asked of you, and you ask your colleague, can you help me out? And they're like, that's not my job. But it absolutely is their job, but they're burnt out, right? They're overwhelmed in that collapse state. And it's interesting to think about this from the psychological and clinical terms and the ways that we try to address, emotional exhaustion, often through these more self-care activities like having a nice dinner with friends, getting exercise. That meaning and purpose one often requires people to feel more sense of social connection and find meaning in that if they can't find meaning in their work per se. And then the depersonalization, often people really do need a vacation or a change of their work role. But these are all the kind of, again, more, I'd say, kind of biomedical approaches. And what I really want to invite my dear compatriot here to talk about is how do we understand burnout from the phenomena of the subtle body and these other aspects that are happening for us. Stress is one way to measure and assess and understand, but the subtle body, and not only its flow, but its blockages, has so much not only that we can kind of learn about what is the root cause of the feelings of burnout, but also ways that we can work with it that might not be as commonly used.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. It's great to be here again. And so, first of all, I think, I don't know if Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche was asked this question when he was here, but, when you hear the word burnout, it burns you out. It's like, oh. And so I think partly is first start focusing on what, this emotional exhaustion, and this second part, what brings a little bit of fire into your life, right? So what helps bring that? And I know in a lot of the literature, we talk about compassion fatigue, right? That's a term. And I know a friend of many of us, Roshi Joan Halifax, doesn't really like that term, right? It's more like empathy fatigue or almost like pathological empathy. And so there's a sense of something missing that it empties us. I was sharing actually a dinner right before of a very good friend of mine, Pastor Juanita Rasmus from Houston. And one of the things that she was talking to an audience, and they were talking about this fatigue, emotional exhaustion. And so she asked people about, what about your perspective of life, right? And so this usual thing of, are you someone that sees the glass empty or the glass full? And of course, different people said one or the other. But there was one kid, actually, who was in this state where he said, actually, I feel that it's refillable. And that stayed with me, because I think that that's what we need to remember, that wherever our compassion fatigue, or whatever you want to call that, it's refillable. So first, even just remembering, and remember that the word mindfulness comes from smriti, which means remembering, right? So just being mindful, just remembering that you are refillable, right? So this is really important. So I think that the moment we forget that, not only we feel exhaustion, but then we actually many times feel that it's not my job, I don't find a purpose in what I'm doing, or forget job, I don't find a purpose in life, right? And so I think that just knowing that is important. Now, from the Buddhist perspective, or from many of the contemplative traditions, there's something, I think, even deeper, more important. So I'm just coming from Nepal, where my 100-year-old teacher just recently passed away, right? So I was just with him, and with his body, just came 2 days ago. And he is he fulfilled his life, and he brought meaning to so many of us. Actually, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche lived with him all his childhood and then learned. So anyways, his name is Yongsin Tenzin Namdak, or Lopon Tenzin Namdak. Most of us know him as Lopon. But in any case, I remember I was translating for him in Mexico. And actually there were 500 people there. And he starts talking, and we were not exactly on this topic, but we were in this topic on what's important in life. And he looks at everyone and he says, "You're all Buddhas." And people start looking at each other like, kind of, really? And he made a good pause. And then he said, "You just haven't realized it." And I think when we get to these states of exhaustion, and hopefully I'll use the word burnout the last time in this talk, we forget that. We forget all the way down that we are Buddhas. And if you don't like the word Buddha, that you're enlightened, that your human potential is always there, that it's refillable, and that we get into these states of mind that we totally forget that. And that's the moment that we need to remember, or have support to remember. You are a Buddha. You are refillable, right? You have music. So support is really important. In fact, now that I'm inspired by the music outside, there's another part, as Eve was saying, compassion. So my background, I'm from Argentina, but in Spanish, there's a word that in Mexico and in Central America they use that unfortunately we don't use in Argentina, but I came to love. And that word is apapacho. And apapacho is this kind of warm hug from and to your soul. So if you want, you can do an apapacho to yourself. Give yourself permission to do that. I think many times we don't give ourselves permission. So if you come from a long day, from a long week, a long month, a long life, just give yourself a nice apapacho because you deserve it. And with that apapacho, breathe, right? Preferably through your nose, all the way to your abdomen and back through your nose. And maybe visualize that breath as light and then give it a color that makes sense to you today. Maybe you want it a warm orange, red, golden color. Maybe you need a more calmer blue, green, whatever is good for you. Maybe you want a rainbow color. Breathe and stay with it for a moment. And when you're ready, you can let go. But if you don't want to let go, you can keep apapachoing yourself during the whole talk. Don't feel shy of doing it. Don't feel, oh, someone is going to look at me. I think we don't give ourselves enough apapacho. We don't give ourselves enough compassion. Sometimes we don't even have empathy for ourselves. And many times I think is social pressure, right? And so why don't we? I mean, what's wrong with not giving care to ourselves? How can we give care to others if we don't even give care to ourselves? So I think it's really important. So again, I'm going to bring my friend Juanita. And Juanita has this very simple practice that I came to love too. And it's a practice of receiving. Because a lot of times, again, we don't give apapachos to ourselves because we feel awkward, right? We feel, how am I going to give to myself, right? So this practice, and maybe we'll have to see without hitting each other, right? But I'll show it to you, and we can at least do part of visualize. But it's really being open and willing to receive. And then give love. Open and willing to receive and give compassion. Whatever it is, open and willing. Now, this movement is really important. And we have it in our tradition very importantly. So when we talk about, coming to the question, subtle body, right? So subtle body, and again, I know many different people have different practices, and so when we kind of have studied and practiced with subtle bodies, there's different maps. In Spanish we say, cada maestrillo con su librillo. Each teacher with their own booklet, right? And different traditions have different maps of the body. Even within the same tradition, we have different maps. And most of us get stuck in the map. Most of us are like, wait, is this right or is this right? Because I heard from so-and-so that it's this way. How can it be this way and this way? Why not? Right? It's like when you go, to the subway and it has all these routes to go, and if you want to go from point A to point, and you press, there's a light going this way. But if you can also go this way, and it also takes you there, right? Or the GPS, I guess, for most people today. But what I'm saying is, there are different maps, and all are good maps, or most of them are good maps. But most of them have also that there's a center. And a lot of times, part of what also gets us into these states of disbursement and therefore losing the energy that we call B, right? So that disbursement makes our mind go outwards, and what we want is come inwards, right? And one way of coming inwards is that we visualize our central channel. And again, there's different ways of visualizing the central channel, and sometimes it starts 4 fingers below the navel, goes to the crown, opens. But there's a sense of inner axis mundi, right? And then actually, if you feel that you still, that centers you but doesn't ground you, from that place 4 fingers below the navel all the way to the center of the earth, there's like an anchor, but an energetic anchor. Not that it pulls you down, it connects you down. It's very different, right? And it also, it always feels it's open here, so it connects us up. And this central channel is made of light. So it's not a cane that cannot, it's actually made of light, so it means it's porous. So it connects us to the whole world. So in a way, we're all interconnected. And because we're interconnected, this aspect of what we call in the literature social support is so important, right? So when we're not well, social support is really, really important. And so one thing that many times we don't do, I was talking to a dear family member today, and this aspect of loneliness, even when there are people, and they don't have to be physically here. Today, we can connect so many ways. But not feeling the support. Sometimes we can be in a place with people around us, we still don't feel it. So how can we start? Start with an apapacho to yourself. You have yourself. Start there. Start with, what are the supports? I think many of us, many is my Jewish background, we look at where it's not. We feel that we always, are looking for what we don't have instead of looking for what we do have. So I think we should start with looking where we do have. So if our tank, compassion tank, empathy tank, is short, it's still, remember, it's refillable. So what are the ways? What are the tools to that? So in the subtle body, the central channel is crucial. And we have, I'm going to say, 5 chakras in the tradition I learned, but I know that there's many traditions that use 7 chakras. Not that we lost 2 chakras, again, different map, that's fine. We actually have thousands of chakras. We have thousands of channels. One of the texts that I work with Shartsa Rinpoche says 72,000. So, there's not limited, but we usually use some. So within those, the center is the heart. This is our center. And as we are in the center, this movement I was saying, there's a sense of bringing in. And in the Burn tradition, that it's been the one that I've been studying for the last 30 some years, we bring in the power of the elements, right? So you're bringing in. there's actually an external practice for this that we call actually soul retrieval, right? I think the Mexicans would call it apapacho, right? So soul retrieval is bringing in, and usually it's a bamboo cane. We call it a dadar, which sometimes it's an arrow. It's a bamboo cane, usually with an arrowhead, and it has the 5 silks of the 5 colors. And when you do this, you're bringing in what is lost. You're bringing in the groundness of the earth element, if that's what you have lost. You bring in the fire, the warmth and the creativity of the fire, and so forth, right? And so, because when we are in these situations of stress, when we are in these situations of grief, it's like we have lost little parts of ourselves. That's why we retrieve them, right? And so when in the Tibetan tradition we say soul retrieval, soul, it's a little different than in the Judeo-Christian Islamic traditions. So soul here means life force, right? Which again gets us back of what we are not ready many times to receive, and that it is refillable, right? So it's part of how do we get this life force back. So in many of the spiritual traditions, it's breath, right? So breath is a very important part. So breathing is crucial. So when we do breathing well, and we have so many techniques, there's thousands and thousands of techniques, but you don't have to know them all. At least know one. Or maybe you know 2 or 3. You start creating your little toolbox, right? And then you use them when you need them. Now, of course, if I'm asking you now, are you breathing? You all have to say yes, right? Otherwise, you'll be falling off your chair. But are you breathing with consciousness? Are you breathing with life force? Are you breathing with zest? Are you breathing with joy? You know, breath can carry all of those. And so the mind is the rider, and the breath is the horse. And if the horse is a little crazy, it goes everywhere. But if the mind can guide it, can bring it. But the horse is very wild, so it has all this energy. So the mind carries it through different places, and particularly we use these inner pathways that we call the channels. And it gets to these places where there's inner traffic jam. We call them chakras, right? So it could be inner traffic jam, or it could be flow. And the flow goes not only in the body, right? We even use this term more, right? In psychology, now you're using more flow, the state of mind of flow. So when things flow, it means the energy is flowing not just better through our own system, but through the community, through the whole world. So flow is really important. And so, but where it all starts is from inside and from being uncluttered. So when we talk about elements, what do you think is the element of the heart? That's a question. Fire, okay. Any other? Earth, okay.
Maybe it's a trick question. It's all the elements, or?
Are you saying all of the above? Someone said space? Ether, space? Yeah, space. Space is but in a way, it's all the elements, right? Because space is the one that is able to contain all the elements. Without space, none of the elements are there, right? in philosophy, we use emptiness, right? Without emptiness, nothing is there. With emptiness, everything can be there, right? But emptiness, I think, translated in many languages, including English, it feels very nihilistic for most of us. So spaciousness, not spaciness, by the way, right? Spaciousness. Space also is the most grounding element. And it's the element that is indestructible. Because a lot of times we start grounding Earth. But we're in California. We know that Earth is shakeable, right? So Earth is not just always stable. But space, you can have missiles going through space. Space is fine. It doesn't disturb space. So when we connect to space and spaciousness, then we're indestructible. But what's the main quality of space? Allows. So allows, if one day we don't feel too well, allows this emotion, allows that emotion. When we lose space, that's when we follow this emotion, follow that emotion. We get exhausted, we get drained, we get this is not my job, we get all these things, right? But we're in space. Everything is fine, right? So partly is come back to your space. So this is the space of your home. And usually this is kind of our big mind. You know, we usually, many times when we think, mind is here. But this is kind of the mind. Usually in contemplative, most traditions that I know of, when they say mind, is here. You know, this is human thinking, this is human being. Right? So we want to be back to human being. Right? And then of course now we know there's a third mind, kind of the gut, and that there's connections. So I think all three are important, but this, at least from the contemplative side, is the most important. And so that, using breathings to get there, connect to that space, being able to clear what we need to clear. And then as we connect, there's something that allows us to feel that sense of warmth, of quality, of compassion, right? So I'm gonna end this part, pass the mic back, by giving you a daily practice that you could do at home, that you're actually probably already doing, but not exactly in the way that I'm gonna describe it. So many years ago, I was in Dharamsala in India, and one good spiritual friend, Karma Lundup, told me, we were talking about, daily life and what do I, how. So he asked me actually, how do I shower? And what do I think when I shower? And I said, when I shower, I'm like thinking, where's my 7 o'clock meeting? And what's my 8 o'clock? And that terrible 9 o'clock? And whatever, And he said, why are you doing that? And then actually, I was telling this in another talk, and I was also saying, and I'm meeting with this person, meeting with that person, saying, why are you bringing all these people to your shower, right? So partly is, when you're showering, don't you just shower? Clean yourself, but not just externally, internally. All those thinking are cluttered, right? So clear internally. And he said, you know what we Tibetans do? He said, when we are showering, our heart becomes like a crystal, right? We clear all that stuff. So if I have this emotion with this person or that person, just clear it. Just clear it. Clear. Then I guess you're drying now. Now you're bringing a little bit of that awareness. Awareness is light. Now you bring light to your crystal. Now rays start coming. rainbows start coming. Those are your actions. Those are, now you're waking up all these positive qualities. There's this, we call it this is the place that we have all the positive qualities without exception. So we allow those. Now, through what we call the three doors of body, of speech, and of mind, we're bringing light and rainbows to our life, and to the life of others. So imagine in those days that, you're going to work and you feel like, oh, again, my work is not meaningful. I'm so drained. So maybe you're drained, do a cold plunge, But, be like, thank you, element water, and when you do it and you clean, take a moment. Bring that light, those qualities. Maybe we can talk later about the different qualities of each element if you want to do it that way. Now you're ready for your day, okay?
Let's keep it in between us. I'm just so, I'm really literally feeling what you're weaving for us in such a beautiful way. And just kind of two inquiries come up, two reflections for me, and I'd love to invite you to offer us practice with these. And one that comes up, I think, is somewhat unusual for people who might have studied in certain practices of meditation, and that's the power of visualization and how important it is. And it often feels a bit awkward or uncomfortable if that hasn't been a practice, because you're like, maybe you've done it in a compassion practice, you're imagining the face of a loved one. You're like, okay, I can kind of do that. You imagine offering them, loving kindness or compassion, and we can kind of get into that. That feels good. But when we imagine something like the quality, the comfort and fluidity of water, we're like, wait, what? I don't know that person. What am I offering? Right? It's such a different way of orienting towards resource. And it's so beautiful and it's natural. Like when you were describing, I've done these practices with you, but when you're describing pulling in the elements, there's like a settling in my body of, yes, like I want these elements. Yes, they're already here. And I think it's because I've, gotten to sit and learn from you and through other books of just how we can imagine and visualize. And it's funny because we have no trouble imagining and visualizing what's wrong, right? We do that in the shower all the time. And so why is it that it feels so unusual to imagine and to call in these supportive elements and qualities, not just people, but elements of the natural world, which do have this kind of intrinsic, innate wisdom, but even if you can't see it as the wisdom, you can see it at least as a reflection of us, right? We can see the qualities we're looking for in the way that the wind moves things. Like, oh, I need to move something. Okay. And it's just such a beautiful practice, visualization. And then one other thing I want to kind of throw in and hear your thoughts on or receive practice is this idea, I loved learning from you these practices of boundary and space protection. And I think when you hear contemporary and psychological orientation of how do we work with burnout, and I think this is true, we need good boundaries. And we do, right? If we are giving out our heart, if we're feeling that sense of overwhelm and obligation, then we do need to create these healthy boundaries. But that kind of boundary is a very self-oriented boundary. It's not necessarily protective in the way that, when I've learned the practices from you, you actually create a sacred boundary. So on both of those, I just love to hear.
Sure, okay. So I'll go backwards. I'll start with boundary and then I'll go with the power of the elements. So yeah, what's interesting in boundary, as you know, and I'll mention a little bit about this practice to all of you. So this practice, which many times we visualize with a syllable so, and I can write it down in a minute. But and it's like fire. And we first feel like from outside, can I bring all that fire to support me, to create myself to visualize as an action deity, as a strong, for those who've, seen in the Tibetan tankas or sometimes in Indian or in other practice, I'm sure there's others, these are the ones I'm familiar with. And so, and usually they're like, like strong, right? This is, and they're fiery and it's a fire of protection. It's not, it's not aggressive. It's protecting, right? And then so you feel you bring that energy, and then as I said, we're now going to be working with the central channel. So we feel that this energy nourishes all our central channel. And so we are all this red, vibrant, strong inside. And then we do breathings where we send this to one side and we send it to the other side. Now we have this energetic wall of fire sauce, right? Sauce, not sauce, right? S-O-S, not as sauce, just in case, with my accent, you might hear things. So, so there's wall of S-Os, of sauce. We actually say so, and so you feel all that. And so the whole universe, but sometimes you can say, okay, I'm gonna be doing a retreat in this house or in this land. And you actually put, those boundaries to support you, or in this place. But here you're doing it, for the whole universe, but you could do it right here. But then what's beautiful of this practice is that, you're connecting, okay, how does it feel to feel the protection of having a little more energy than I usually do, to have my whole central channel filled with this fire. Now I have a wall of fire, and you stay with that for a little bit. What do you do then? You bring it all into two little tigles or spheres of light. Bring them into your central channel, they dissolve. And if you're able to stay in that dissolution, the fire deity dissolves, the soul dissolves, everything dissolves. So what do we get? Space. So space is the most protective place you can be. If, there's a big if you're aware. Right? If you're aware, space is it. Right? So when you're fully present in that space, nothing can hurt you. As I was saying earlier, missiles can go through it. You just allow, because there's nothing to be hurt. Right? Just let it come, let it go. Sometimes it stays a little longer than what you want to, but it continues. It's like clouds in the sky. The sky doesn't say, how cloudy I'm today, right? So you just let it go. But the more you're aware of it, and the more you're aware that you are a Buddha or you're enlightened, that you have these qualities, then you just can stay with that. And if that's not enough, you support yourself. Or you support each other, right? There's ways, in the group, right? Or whatever group you feel supported by, right? So all these ways of connecting back. The other practice, so the idea is that you start with something external to then come internal, and now that external dissolves in the internal, you still maintain, right, that awareness of all that you had external as sense of protection. Now it's internal without need of being a wall or a deity or a Garuda or a whatever, sense. Space is the most protective. But also, No, I don't feel that protecting space. Okay, then build the firewall. Then build, be yourself as a deity. Notice where you are and what you need. Because I think the other big problem that we have is that we don't allow ourselves to notice where we are. And so we practice from where either we want to be, where we're told to be, whether we should be. I've been practicing 20 years, so I should be here. But if I'm not, there's no point in practicing this. Practice from where you are. And that's the best place to practice. That's the most beautiful place to practice. Why? That's where transformations occur, not there. When we visualize these deities, it's not about the deity coming to you and saying, you did a great job, It's actually about us having these little openings. Beautiful. Even if I then lose it, just that moment. Okay, now, because I had that moment of recognition, I can come again. The word for meditation in Tibetan, Gom, is related to Kom, which means familiarity. Slowly, you become more familiar with it. You can stay a little longer. Eventually, like Lopen, you are 24/7 in that state of mind. But for us, it's, at least we get it, we lose it. We get it, maybe a little longer, we lose it. We get it, but every time we get it is this moment, I think you like this, right? The moment of, ding, usually in cartoons, the bulb goes on, bang, And again, in daily life, when you sneeze, achoo, that's it. Stay there. So, I think we need to promote practices that help us reconnect to that lost space. So I think this is part of the awareness, right? In Tibetan, we call it rikpa. What's the non-awareness? Marikpa, right? Ignorance, right? So it's coming back to that awareness of that space and the potentiality that it has. Now, the reason why we don't realize that space many times is because so many clutters and veils, right? So in our tradition, we have different prayers that we do. Sometimes we call it Guru Yoga because we feel that having that support, of our teachers is an external support and an internal support. So Guru Yoga means like the union with the teacher. And as you recite sometimes a prayer or even just the sound of ah. Ah for us is kind of these sounds that contains all. So this is ah. So I don't forget. You don't have to tattoo it, but so for me, that way I'm not forgetting. So ah, right? So sometimes you say, ah. Let's say it 3 times for whoever wants to say it. If you don't like it, don't do it. As you keep on breathing, You can visualize that around the chakra and the space in your heart, you feel a little more white crystal clear light, which represents space. And just notice, without getting into any stories, just notice how that space is. Maybe you feel it open, maybe you feel a little cluttered. As you keep on breathing, now we'll visualize a red wisdom fire. Usually we use the sound of Ram, but you don't worry about the sound. I'll say it, but then we can, if you want to say it, of course you can say it with me. Ram is R-A-M. Ram. And feel this red, luminous wisdom light coming to your crown chakra and clearing all your central channel, particularly your heart, with that fire, burning all the karmic seeds, karmic traces that may cause all these disturbances and problems that block your Rigpa. This fire is inexhaustible. Red, luminous light, quality of fire, burning all those obstacles. And then green light. Green light is the element of air, and we'll say young, Y-A-N-G. And when we say young, we'll feel this wisdom wind, very strong wind that will clear all the things that the fire couldn't take. Feel that wind, maybe like a hurricane, green, taking away all the karmic seeds, all the problems, all the veils, all the stories that the fire couldn't burn. And then blue light, the wisdom of water, Mang, M-A-N-G. And as we say that, it'd be a strong water, almost like a waterfall, also coming through your crown and clearing all your central channel, all your body, all your chakras, all your obstacles. This strong waterfall, big river, clearing every part that the fire couldn't burn, the wind couldn't take, now sweeping away, clearing. So this is like that shower, but with fire, air, water, all cleansed. If it's comfortable, bring a hand or both hands to your heart, and we'll say ah 3 times. Let the power of the light of Ah nourish you. Remind you of your Buddha nature or enlightened nature, and refill all the qualities. Retrieve all those aspects needed. Breathe from your nose into your whole body, and particularly through your heart. Noticing how your heart may be a little more clear, a little more luminous, with more possibilities of rays and rainbow. Even if it's just 10% more. And the most important part is don't forget. Don't forget that you have those qualities. Don't forget that you're Buddhas. And with that, as you feel those rays of light, let them nourish not just your heart, but all your body. Nourish every cell of your body. Nourish you emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And from your body, let it nourish outwards in all directions. So it reaches everyone here. It reaches everyone in San Francisco, everyone in California, everyone in all the states, in the whole world, in all the universes. Reaching. And very importantly, open your heart so all those lights from all others reach you too. Remind you of all your potentiality. So that's a visualization.
I think it would be lovely to give a chance for some folks to ask questions, Ale. So for folks in the room, we have a mic here so friends online can hear us. For friends online, you can raise a little hand. Questions or a big hand, questions, reflections, anything you'd like to share about your practice or any questions about these practices in general. One moment before we do so. As always, one part of this gathering that we get to do every Wednesday and that many beings do all over the world to be in Sangha is we get to really exercise the qualities of compassion and non-harming through body, speech, and mind. And so as we are listening to one another, as we are sharing, we're listening with the kind of those ears of the Buddha, right? That real quality of hearing through our compassionate lens. And that includes even our own thoughts that arise, our judgments and otherwise. And as we're speaking, we're keeping in mind with compassion other beings in this room in terms of what we share and how we share. But it's so important for us to be able to create this always ever-changing constellation of Sangha and kind of be and hold community with each other. So before we engage with each other in this sacred practice of listening and sharing, does that sound good to everyone? Yes? Wonderful. Okay. Questions, reflections? Yes, please.
I'm just wondering, so that was really incredible. Thank you so much. And I guess maybe just to bring it full circle, we started off kind of talking about burnout, sort of stressors we're dealing with. And then, this mechanism of being refillable, right? That we can kind of refill our tank and have energy that we sort of bring back into ourselves and to give back out. You gave one really great practical everyday sort of practice for us in terms of the sort of shower piece. I'm wondering, with some of these chants, do you have any sort of recommendations or guidance in terms of how we can integrate that into a everyday practice? Love to hear that.
Yeah, sure. So you could do similar to what we did today. So again, many times we do it with prayer, but just the is that sense of connecting. Sometimes we would visualize externally a being of light or a teacher. So I usually visualize my teacher. I visualize a being of light that we call tapiritsa. But, or if you don't like a being, it could be a beautiful sphere of light. So basically it's kind of, as you do the you're feeling kind of start waking up that aspect in you, right? So in a way, Buddha means awakened, right? So now you're awakened, you're Buddha within. But you're also noticing that there are things that are cluttering. So with fire, Ram, with air, Yang, with water, Mang, which we call the three active elements, you're clearing all. As you have more uncluttered stuff, now you say again as a way of reconnecting now that you have more cleared, kind of reminding, being more mindful of that space with awareness. And as you connect to that, you have that intention of, I'm not just going to keep it to myself, but I'm going to radiate that to others. And as I do that, not forget that those same channels as I radiate out give me the possibility of receiving in.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ram, Yang, Mang.
And two beautiful books. Also, I'm going to be your agent. Beautiful online course through Wisdom Publications that goes through all the videos and practices, just to get the familiarization. I think is helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. How was that practice? Oh, I see friends online. Hi, Sylvia and Gina. Is that a question we have? Or just hand waving? I'm not quite sure. Are you asking? It's too small for me. Can anybody see? Is there a hand?
She's saying something, but she's muted.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I don't see a hand. Who should I unmute?
Sylvia
Bellman?
I don't think she's okay.
Maybe just allow them to unmute themselves. Okay.
No, they forcibly mute everyone.
Okay.
So,
They put the soul.
anyone willing to share about their practice or anything that they found interesting? It's one thing to meditate, it's another thing to actually reflect on your experience, which deepens the practice. Thank you.
Um, I had a lot of visualizations happening during, when we're opening up the chakras. Is that common? Is that something that, I know some meditations you're like, don't try to visualize, just try to breathe and focus. There's others that visualize. Is this, yeah.
Yeah, so, part of visualization is also focusing the mind on what you visualize. So, right, so there's one part that the visualization is a support for the mechanism of the practice, if you would, right? So in this case, the Ram, I didn't write it, right? But, there's a visual, but you could just say that red light and feel that fire. And now you're focusing just on the fire, not on all the other elements, not on, and so as you do that, that's what you're focusing, fire. And so other visualizations may be, well, let them be cleared, right? All that other stuff, all that other stories that come, and then we shift, moving from visualizing from Ram to Yang. Now it's that green, light and kind of air element. So each time the visualization supports the focus and the mechanism. What I mean here by mechanism is kind of the method part, right? So the fire there's the visualization, but when we say visualization, we also mean how the mind connects to that object. So not everyone is visual. So I may connect to the fire as fire, but I may maybe not visualize, that's not something that it comes easy to me. Maybe I don't even see the red, but I feel the burning, right? So I connect kinesthetically to that. So whichever way, it is the mind focusing on that. And the same with each one. And then the both allows you to focus on that and then allow yourself to rest in a more open way, just resting, just staying with, in a way, all these things that happen. Now you're processing. Processing is not here. Processing is resting, fully resting, just letting things unfold.
So that was, it's quite interesting because today I had said some things, done some things that were maybe a little bit harmful, that I felt were harmful. And every time, we let out an it just kind of dissipated. That was quite beautiful and wonderful.
Good.
So it was cleansing.
Good. Wonderful.
Yes.
Hi, I've had my hand up.
Okay, we'll go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Alejandro. I'm from
Hi.
Mexico, so I'm very proud to be from the culture of the Apapacho.
Excellent.
Yeah. And, we express that to our loved ones, especially like a very, very deep and sincere feeling of, I don't know, well-being and good wishes, and, love. But what I wanted to say that surprised me when you said that meditation means familiarity, because all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, I usually meditate in the morning when I wake up in the morning, and I usually sleep sideways. But when I put myself flat, all of a sudden my subtle body kind of like gives me the message, aha, it's time, for meditation. And I mean, it's such a wonderful invitation. And I know the feeling when I'm in that spaciousness that you were talking about. So anyway, that was just interesting. I wanted to comment on that because I didn't know, but I feel it.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Gracias.
Question in this room? Or
Yeah,
comment?
I was just wondering, thoughts on like, this might be a little tactical, but like directionality. So I've done meditations where visualizing the central channel and you're breathing and pulling like prana up and then like sort of up in the front and then down in the back. So you're sort of like almost like a cycle of energy. And so when you were leading the visualization, I wasn't sure with the fire and the air, are we
Yeah.
going up, we're going down? Like, what do you suggest when we
Yeah.
do this ourselves?
Were those more Chinese style practices?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in here, I would say if you think of directionality, it'd be down because it's coming from up, it's coming to the crown, all your central channel kind of down. All three are this way. Clear, 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 clear. But then it's resting, so it's multi-directionality, right? Space doesn't have direction. It's all directions. So, but if you have a center, would be here. You know the word mandala that we use many times? In Tibetan is gilkor, which means center and periphery. Right? So you're staying in the center, clearing through the periphery. And the most important part as we kind of do this clearing is the resting, because a lot of times we stay in the clearing and we like practices that purify and we stay in that, but then we don't enjoy the result, which is in the resting.
That's so important. I'm so happy you said that, because I think sometimes the energetic nature can actually get in the way of that rest or deep rest or that sense of real resource and settling, not just the activation. So before we close for this evening, I'd love to take a moment that you could talk a little about what happens tomorrow when we all come back at this same time tomorrow for more.
So what happens tomorrow depends on you. You know, as many times I say, I have a plan A. I come with a plan A, and Eve likes to write it down. And if you look at it, we did plan B. But it's good to have it because, you know, if we get lost, we go back to plan A. But it's also good to see what do we feel, because we co-create, whether we notice it or not. We're co-creating that space. This mandala, even tomorrow, if we're all here sitting in the same spaces, will be a little different mandala. So tomorrow, plan A is we'll start with we'll do some movement practices. I'll see, depends, you know, this space and the movements that we usually do may not be the most feasible, because I don't want you to be punching each other or, you know, but there are practices that we will work with the subtle body. We work with some of the different chakras, and particularly in this tradition, we talk about 5 different kinds of breath that relates to the same functions of the breath in Tibetan medicine. So the pervasive breath, the upward moving, the downward moving, the fire, and the life force. So probably my sense is that we'll do more of life force and pervasive breath. But I'm also open, you know, if people say, well, can we do more of this? I'll always consider it.
Very generous. Do you want to dedicate the merit?
Sure, do you want me? Sunda Bhagawa Kanji Chenam ji dun dung du sum sang bele dri gunjane gu sun zo be san jen yu do sho. All pure virtues done through the three doors, I dedicate to the welfare of all sentient beings without exception. Having purified all afflictions and obscurations of the three bodies, may we attain or accomplish the three dimensions of the enlightened qualities, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. You can visualize that those rays of light emanating from your heart to everyone's heart, and have an open heart to receive those rays of light back, so that you energize and be energized and go out with a full tank of energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. Super special to be here with you all.